I'm 80 years old, and last Tuesday, I buried my best friend. His name was Chris Wan. We were 73 years old when we met. 7 years. That's all we got. 7 years of the kind of friendship I'd spent my entire life claiming I already had. And here's what I need you to understand. I thought I had friends before Robert. I really did. I had people I called friends for 40 years, 50 years. I had golf buddies and work colleagues and neighborhood guys and church committee members. I had a whole contact list full of names. I had a garage full of Christmas cards from people who signed your good friend, Dave, or love from your pal, Mike and Susan. I was wrong about all of it. Let me take you back. When I was 28, fresh out of the Navy and working my first real job at an insurance company in Cleveland, I met Tom Brennan. Tom sat in the cubicle next to mine. We ate lunch together every day for 3 years. We talked about sports and complained about our boss and occasionally grabbed beers on Friday. When I got married, Tom was at my wedding. When he got promoted and transferred to Cincinnati, we promised we'd stay in touch. We didn't. Not really. A Christmas card the first year. Maybe a phone call. Then nothing. I told people Tom was one of my best friends. When I was 35, my wife Linda and I bought our first house in a suburb of Akron. Next door lived Bill and Martha Henderson. Bill and I discovered we both loved fishing. Every Saturday morning from May through September, we'd head out to Lake Erie. We did this for 15 years. 15 years of Saturday mornings. We talked about bass and walleye and the weather and work and occasionally our kids. We laughed a lot. We had a routine. When Bill's mother died, I went to the funeral. When my father died, Bill came to mine. When Linda got sick, the first time, when she had pneumonia and was in the hospital for a week, Bill mowed our lawn without being asked. I called Bill one of my closest friends. But here's what I never did. I never told Bill I was scared when Linda was sick. I never told him that sometimes I felt like I was failing at being a father, that my teenage son barely spoke to me, and I didn't know how to fix it. I never told him that I felt trapped in my job, that I'd wanted to start my own business, but was too afraid to try. I never asked him if he was happy, if his marriage was good, if he had dreams he'd given up on. We talked about fish. For 15 years, we talked about fish. When Bill and Martha moved to Arizona in 2003, they wanted to be near their daughter. We promised we'd visit. We exchanged maybe 10 emails over the next 5 years. Then Bill had a stroke. Martha called to tell me. I sent a card. I didn't go see him. It was too far, I told myself. Work was busy. Money was tight. Linda's health was up and down. I sent a card. Bill died in 2011. I found out 3 weeks later from someone else in the old neighborhood. I hadn't even known he was dying. I told people Bill Henderson had been one of my best friends for 15 years. You see the pattern? I'm not proud of it, but I need you to see it because I lived it for 60 years and thought I was doing friendship right. There was Dave from church, 20 years of sitting in the same pew, serving on the same committees, hosting the same Christmas potlucks. We knew each other's kids' names. We knew where each other worked. We knew which cars each other drove. When Linda died in 2015, Dave and his wife brought over a casserole and sat with me for an hour. They were kind. They were good people. But Dave didn't know that Linda's death almost destroyed me. He didn't know that I sat in my garage for 3 hours every night because I couldn't stand being in the house without her. He didn't know that I was drinking too much, sleeping too little, barely eating. He didn't know because I didn't tell him, and he didn't ask. Why would he? We didn't have that kind of friendship. We had casserole friendship, committee friendship, Christmas card friendship. There was Marcus from my poker group, 12 years of Tuesday night poker in his basement. We laughed. We busted each other's chops. We knew each other's tells at the card table. When I had a good hand, Marcus could read my face. But he couldn't read that I was dying inside after Linda passed. Or he could, and neither of us knew what to do about it. There were dozens more. Guys from work, neighbors, guys from the gym. My cousin Jerry, who I saw every Thanksgiving and exchanged occasional texts with, but never really talked to about anything that mattered. I was 73 years old, and I had been to hundreds of barbecues and dozens of funerals, and I had shaken thousands of hands, and I had not one single person I could call at 2 in the morning and tell the truth to. Not one. And then I met Robert. It was at the grocery store, of all places. October 15th, 2017. I remember because it was 3 days after what would have been Linda's 72nd birthday, and I was having a bad day. I was standing in the produce section, staring at tomatoes like they held the answers to something, and this old Chinese man next to me said, Those are terrible. The good ones are over here. I looked at him. He was small, maybe 5'6", wearing a cardigan even though it wasn't that cold. He had kind eyes. The tomatoes? I said. The tomatoes, he confirmed. Also, you look like you need coffee more than you need tomatoes. There's a place across the street. I'm buying. I should have said no. I didn't know this man. But something in his face, I said yes. We sat in that coffee shop for 3 hours. Robert told me his wife Helen had died 18 months earlier. He told me he had 2 daughters who lived in California and visited twice a year and called every Sunday out of obligation, not connection. He told me he'd been a chemical engineer for 40 years and had retired at 68 and didn't know what to do with himself anymore. He told me he was lonely in a way that had nothing to do with being alone and everything to do with not being known. But here's what else we did. We lived. Robert loved art. He'd never told anyone that, not really, but he took me to museums. We spent hours at the Cleveland Museum of Art, sitting in front of paintings, talking about what we saw, what we felt. I'd never done that before. I'd gone to museums with Linda twice maybe, walked through quickly, checked boxes. With Robert, we sat. I love music. Jazz, specifically. Had since I was a kid, but Linda didn't like it much, and the guys I knew thought it was boring. I had hundreds of records I never played. Robert came over one Tuesday evening, and I put on Miles Davis's Kind of Blue, and we sat in my living room for an hour without saying a word, just listening. When it ended, Robert said, "That was perfect." It was perfect. We cooked together. Robert taught me to make proper dumplings, his mother's recipe, he said, something he hadn't made in 30 years. We spent an entire Friday afternoon in his kitchen, folding dumplings, making a mess, laughing when they fell apart. We talked about God and death and fear and hope. Robert wasn't religious, not in a formal way, but he believed something bigger was out there. I'd been going to church for 50 years and wasn't sure what I believed. We sat with those questions together, not trying to solve them, just being honest about them. We challenged each other. When I complained about my son, Robert asked hard questions. Have you told him you're sorry? Have you asked him what he needs from you? When Robert talked about his daughters, I pushed him. When did you last call them just to say you love them? Not on Sunday. On a Tuesday. Just because. We made each other uncomfortable in the best way. And here's what I learned. This is what friendship actually is. It's not golf every Saturday. It's not Christmas cards. It's not knowing someone's kids' names or bringing a casserole when someone dies. Those things are nice. They're kind. They're neighborly. But they're not friendship. Friendship is telling someone you're scared and having them say me too, instead of it'll be fine. Friendship is sitting in silence together and it not being awkward. Friendship is someone knowing the worst parts of you and still showing up on Tuesday morning. Friendship is being challenged to be better and not getting defensive. Friendship is crying in a coffee shop at 75 years old and not being ashamed because the person across from you is crying too. Friendship is being known, fully known, and choosing to stay anyway. I had 73 years of life before I experienced that. 73 years. What a waste. Robert and I had 7 years. 7 years of real friendship. 7 years of truth and laughter and tears and dumplings and Miles Davis and walks in the park and hard conversations and showing up for each other in ways that actually mattered. Last Tuesday, I sat next to his hospital bed and held his hand while he died. His daughters were there. They thanked me for being his friend. They said he talked about me all the time, that knowing me had changed his life. It changed mine too. But 7 years. That's all we got. 7 years of the thing I'd been pretending to have my entire life. Now let me tell you what I wish someone had told me when I was your age. You don't have friends. Not real ones. Not yet. Not unless you've let someone see who you actually are, and they've let you see them back. You have people you do activities with. You have people you text occasionally. You have people whose names you know and whose faces you recognize and who you see at parties or church or the office or the gym. That's not the same thing. Real friendship is rare. Shockingly rare. I know that now. Most people go their entire lives without experiencing it. They think they have friends because they have people they enjoy spending time with. They think they have friends because they have people who show up to their birthday party or their wedding or their parents' funeral. But real friendship, the kind where you're truly known and truly seen, most people never have it. And here's the tragedy. It's available. It's possible. But it requires something most of us are too scared to do. It requires vulnerability. Real vulnerability. Not the Instagram version where you post about having a hard day and people leave heart emojis. The kind where you tell someone the truth about your fears, your failures, your shame, your disappointments, your dreams that scare you. It requires time. Not quality time, actual time. Hours and hours of just being together, talking and not talking, learning how someone thinks, how they feel, what makes them them. It requires reciprocity. You can't have a real friendship where one person does all the opening up and the other stays closed off. Both people have to risk, and it requires showing up consistently, not just when it's convenient, not just at scheduled events, but in the ordinary moments, the boring moments, the hard moments. I didn't do any of that for 73 years. I kept people at arm's length because being truly known felt dangerous. What if they didn't like what they saw? What if I showed them my fear and they thought I was weak? What if I told them about my failures and they judged me? So I kept it light, kept it surface, kept it safe. And I woke up at 73 having lived 7 decades and having never truly been friends with anyone. You think you have time. You think, I'll deepen these friendships later, after the kids are grown, after I get that promotion, after I retire, after things settle down. Things never settle down. And then you're 80 years old, burying the one person who actually knew you, and you realize you waited your whole life to experience something that was available to you the entire time. Don't wait. I know what you're thinking, but my friends and I are close. We tell each other things. Do you? Do you really? Do they know what you're actually afraid of? Do they know the parts of yourself you're ashamed of? Do they know your real dreams? Not the ones you post about, but the ones that terrify you? Or do they know the version of you that you've decided is acceptable to show them? There's a difference. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about the people you call friends. Really think about it. If you got terrible news tomorrow, really terrible news, the kind that changes everything, who could you call? Not who would you call because they're supposed to be called. Who could you call and tell the absolute truth to about how scared you are? If you have even one person, you're lucky. Hold on to them. Invest in them. Show up for them. If you don't have anyone, or if you're not sure, then it's time to change that. Not someday. Now. Find someone or multiple someones who you think might be capable of real friendship. And take the risk. Tell them something true. Not something easy. Something that matters. Something that scares you to say out loud. See what they do with it. If they deflect or joke or try to fix it immediately or change the subject, they might not be ready. That's okay. Try someone else. If they listen, really listen, and then share something true back, that's the beginning. Then do it again and again. Show up. Be consistent. Be vulnerable. Be curious about them. Ask real questions. How are you isn't a real question. What are you afraid of right now is a real question. What's been on your mind lately that you haven't told anyone? That's a real question. This is uncomfortable. I know. It feels awkward and too intense and like you're being weird. Do it anyway. Because here's what I know now. All those decades of surface-level friendships weren't less awkward. They were just differently awkward. The awkwardness of pretending. The awkwardness of keeping distance. The awkwardness of small talk with people you've known for 20 years. That awkwardness doesn't build anything. It just protects you from nothing in particular. The awkwardness of real vulnerability, that builds everything. And yes, sometimes people won't reciprocate. Sometimes you'll open up and they'll stay closed off. Sometimes you'll reach out and they'll pull back. That's the risk. But the alternative is what I had for 73 years. Safety, maybe, but also loneliness. Connection without depth. Companionship without intimacy. A full contact list and an empty heart. I'm 80 years old. I buried my best friend last Tuesday. I have good days and bad days. Some days I'm grateful I got 7 years with Robert. Some days I'm furious that I wasted 73 years before finding him. Most days I'm both. What I know for certain is this. Those 7 years were worth more than all the decades before them. Being truly known by one person mattered more than being casually known by hundreds. You think friendship is common. It's not. You think you already have it. You probably don't. But you could, if you're willing to risk it. If you're willing to be honest. If you're willing to show up consistently, vulnerably, courageously. Don't wait until you're 73 to figure this out. Don't wait until you bury someone to realize what you've been missing. The choice is yours. But make it now. Because here's the truth that haunts me every single day. I could have had what I had with Robert, with Bill, with Dave, with Tom, with Marcus, with any of them. They were right there. The opportunity was right there for decades. I just never took it. Don't be me. If this resonates with you, if you're realizing you don't have what I'm talking about, share this. Send it to someone you want to try being real friends with. Leave a comment about who in your life you're going to reach out to differently. Tell me I'm wrong if you think I am. But whatever you do, don't wait. Time is shorter than you think. Real friendship is rarer than you think. And it's worth everything.